This is the regular council meeting of Monday, July 18th, 2022 at 6 p.m. Just a reminder that the webinar is being recorded and will be published to the city's YouTube site after the meeting. Item number 1, adoption of the minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes to adopt tonight. The Governance and Operations Committee meeting of July 4th, 2022, the regular council meeting of July 4th, 2022, and the Special Governance and Operations Committee meeting of July 13th, 2022. The recommendation is that these 3 sets of minutes as listed be adopted as circulated. Do I have someone to make that recommendation, make that motion? Councillor Butler, Councillor Jones, thank you very much. Any errors or omissions seen on these minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Any against? Carried, thank you. Public question period. Ms. McIsaac, do you have any written submissions for public question period that have come through?
No, we do not.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 3, communications. 3.1, appointment of Chief Administrative Officer, Chief Financial Officer positions. And the recommendation is that council appoint Colin McClure to the officer positions of Chief Administrative Officer and Financial Administrator for the City of Trail. And the second recommendation is that the interim appointments of Michelle McIsaac as Deputy Chief Administrative Officer and Reno Merlo as the Financial Officer be rescinded. So Ms. McIsaac, I'm going to open the floor to you to just give us a bit of a background on this one.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Section 146 of the Community Charter requires that the city officers' positions be established by bylaw. So the city's officer bylaw number 2442, which was adopted in 1999, establishes 3 officer positions, being the Chief Administrative Officer, the Corporate Administrator, and the Financial Administrator. As council is aware, Mr. Colin McClure was hired earlier in the year to serve in the capacity of Chief Administrative Officer and Chief Financial Officer, and he joined us in early June of this year. We are, though, at times asked to provide documentation to outside agencies with respect to the officer position appointments, and so for good order, it's being suggested that council formally appoint or formally confirm Mr. McClure's appointment as the Chief Administrative Officer and Financial Administrator for the City of Trail. And then as a separate resolution, it would be suggested that the interim appointments of myself as the Deputy CAO and Reno Merlo as the interim Financial Officer can now be rescinded.
Okay, Ms. McIsaac, would you like these recommendations to be moved into separate recommendations?
Yes, please, because if we do have to submit to an outside agency the appointment with respect to Mr. McClure, we would have it separate from the other matter.
Perfect, thank you. So the first recommendation is that council appoint Colin McClure to the officer positions of Chief Administrative Officer and Financial Administrator for the City of Trail. Do I have someone to make that motion? Councillor Gattafoni Robinson, do I have someone to second that? Councillor Jones, thank you. Any questions on this matter? Councillor Dobie, go ahead, and you're on mute.
Okay, so I notice, I'd like to address this to Ms. McIsaac, please. I noticed in your staff report, and thank you for that, that when we talk about Colin McClure under background 3.3, we indicated a date of June 6, 2022. So my question would be is why wouldn't we put that date in on the recommendation?
In the resolution, if council feels a desire to, it's not necessary. So typically what the resolution that we provide to outside agencies just needs to provide some proof that Mr. McClure is in those officer positions, the 2 officer positions. But if you wish to amend the recommendation and include on as of June 6, 2022, there'd be no harm with that.
So would the June 6th date apply to the corporate administrator and the financial administrator as well?
The interim appointment, so it's not a necessity for my appointment as the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer to be rescinded, but it is necessary for you to rescind Mr. Merlo's as the chief financial officer because he is being replaced by Mr. McClure. And I just thought for good order, you could make that motion, rescinding both of the interim appointments.
Okay, so in reference to the interim appointments, there were salary increases to account for that. So as of June 6th, have the interims increases been reduced to what they were before?
We are in a regular council meeting and now treading on the personal or salary information of staff. I think we could provide you that information following the meeting by email unless Mr. McClure suggests otherwise.
Okay, I thought that, but maybe we should go into closed or have it on a closed agenda. Thanks, Ms. McIsaac.
Okay, so
And I do want to clarify, sorry, Mayor, please, the reason I said that my appointment as the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer isn't actually necessary is mostly because as a municipality, you're not required to have a Chief Administrative Officer. You are though required to have two officer positions, the Financial Officer and the Corporate Officer. So because you're not mandated to have a Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, we never did a formal resolution of appointment for me in the same way that you needed to do for Mr. Merlo as your financial officer in the interim.
Okay, so the recommendation is before us. I have Eleanor who moved that recommendation and Councillor Gattafoni Robinson and Councillor Jones to second that. Any other questions on this matter? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. The second recommendation is that the interim appointments of Michelle McIsaac as Deputy Chief Administrative Officer and Reno Merlo as the Financial Officer be rescinded. Do I have someone to make that motion? Councillor Butler, who would like to second that? Sorry, it was a few people putting their hands up there. Councillor Jones, thank you very much. Any comments on this one? Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item 3.2 is 1182050 BC Limited, non-medical cannabis retail store license relocation. Ms. McIsaac, I will open the floor to you for this.
Thank you. The city is in receipt of some correspondence from the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. They are looking for council's approval of a request from 1182050 BC Limited's an application to them to relocate a non-medical cannabis retail store from 876 Rosin Avenue, which was formerly operating as Butterbong, to 1205 Bay Avenue. And this application for relocation requires council consideration, much like a new application would. And so with that, because it's been a number of years since council has considered the non-cannabis licenses, it is important for your resolution to include certain elements when we do reply back to the Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch. So the recommendation is quite detailed so that we meet all of the required elements that the branch needs to hear. But just in background, licenses for non-medical cannabis retail stores are issued by the Provincial Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch, and opportunity for local government input, as I noted, is provided on both any new license applications as well as on license relocations. A license will not be issued by the LCRB unless a positive recommendation is received from the local government in whose area the proposed store is located. For any new applications, we go through a public comment process, where we send notice of the application to all property owners and occupants within 50 meters, and we invite comments back. In the case of a relocation, I was in touch with the LCRB staff to determine exactly what we were required to do in terms of public input to this application, because it is a relocation from a Roslyn Avenue locale to a Bay Avenue locale. And in fact, council had previously authorized the issuance of a non-medical cannabis license to the property at 1205 Bay Avenue. And so we had gone through a public process where we had invited comment from property owners. We sent a total of 76 letters out to all property owners and occupants within 50 meters and received no response back at the time that we were looking at the application for the green pineapple. So at this time, the Buttabong locale is no longer operating. They are willing to give up their license, and it is being proposed that at 1205 Bay Avenue, they would take on that license and then would be looking at rebranding from the Buttabong to the green pineapple or smoky pineapple, one of the two. There's a couple of those franchises in our local area. So as we were preparing for tonight's council meeting, it was decided, because we had gone through a public consultation process in 2019, received no response with respect to our mail out, and it was thought that we'd receive a similar response now. We didn't undertake a repeat of the community consultation. And with that, it's being recommended that council recommend the transfer of the non-medical cannabis retail store to 1182050 BC Limited from 876 Roslyn Avenue to 1205 Bay Avenue, and including all the reasoning and comments that are included in the recommendation before you.
Do I have someone to make that recommendation? Councillor Butler, thank you. Do I have someone to second that recommendation? Councillor Dobie, is there any questions on this matter?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councillor Jones.
Michelle, can you tell me where 1205 Bay Avenue is? Where is the vicinity?
It is at the corner of Bay Avenue and Farwell. There were some eateries previously in the building beside a frame shop.
At the four-way stop.
At the four-way.
Across from.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions on this matter? Okay, let's go for a vote then. All in favor? Against, if any? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, item number 4, bylaws. 4.1 is zoning bylaw amendment bylaw 2920-2022 for adoption. The recommendation is that this zoning bylaw be adopted. Ms. McIsaac, did you want to speak about this?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Some time back, council had gone through a public hearing process with respect to the rezoning of a Theater Road property. I don't have the civic address in front of me, sorry for that, but they were looking to rezone from R1 to R1S to allow a secondary suite to be constructed within an accessory building on the property. There were no concerns raised at public hearing. The bylaw received its 3rd reading on May 24th, but we did have to wait until Ministry of Transportation's approval of the rezoning because it is in close proximity to their arterial highway, and we've just received that as of July 13th. So the bylaw is now being put back to council for adoption, and it is recommended that you proceed with the adoption at tonight's meeting.
Okay, do I have some? Okay, Councillor Jones, thank you. Is there someone to second the motion? Councillor Dobie, thank you. Any questions on this item as put forward? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 4.2, Trail Recreation Fee Bylaw Amendment Bylaw number 2921-2022 for adoption. Ms. McIsaac?
This matter has been before council at both the Governance and Operations Committee meeting for review, and the bylaw was then brought forward and given first, second, and third readings. Once adopted, this bylaw will allow for our fees and charges related to our recreation facilities and programs to be adjusted for, the fall season and moving forward. And it's being recommended that you proceed with adoption.
Okay, thank you. Do I have someone to make this motion that the Trail Recreation Fee Bylaw Amendment Bylaw number 2921, 2022 be adopted? Councillor Butler, thank you. Is there someone to second that motion?
Hello.
Councillor Jones, thank you very much. Any questions on this motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Against, if any? Carried. Thank you. Item 4.3 is zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 2922, 2022, third reading. This is the public hearing that we just had, and there was some community concern. Ms. McIsaac, do we need to defer this for more information from staff?
Yes, but before we get into any discussion on it, I would just suggest that Councillor Jones consider whether or not she wishes to participate in this part of the meeting, or if she wishes to excuse herself.
I'll excuse.
So with respect to the zoning bylaw amendment, bylaw number 2922, there was a public hearing held just prior to the regular council meeting tonight. There were some questions raised at the public hearing, and also some concerns were brought forward with respect to the proximity of the build from one property to an existing townhouse unit, as well as impacts on the view. So typically when there are concerns raised at public hearing that council feels we may need some staff reporting on, you will defer third reading until staff can bring you back some further information. So with respect to the number of questions that one of the attendees at the public hearing raised, it might be in good order for council to defer third reading until such time that we bring you some reporting.
Okay, do I have someone to make that deferral motion? Councillor Butler? Do I have someone to second that deferral motion? Councillor Gattafoni Robinson, thank you very much. Any comments on the deferral? Questions? No? Okay, all in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And I'll just text call Councillor Jones to come back. Okay, great. So now we're at council committee reports. Councillor Gattafoni Robinson, you're first. Go ahead, please.
Okay, last week I was a guest at the Gold Fever Follies inaugural play. It's called What's in a Name. It was very, very well attended, and it was very, very well done. And I thank them for the invitation, and it was enjoyed. And that's my report, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Gattafoni Robinson? Seeing none, Councillor Jones?
I actually don't have a report. Yeah, I don't have a report. I attended the Gold Fever Follies and Music in the Park, and yeah, it was a great week. And that's my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Councillor Jones? Seeing none, Councillor Butler?
short and sweet too, but I would like to pass on, I think, as Councillor Jones mentioned and Councillor Gaffoni Robinson, there's been quite a few activities going on, including the movie in the park and music in the park and the movie up at Haley. And I just wanted to pass on my appreciation to all the organizations out there that are putting on these events this summer. So thank you very much. That's the end of my report.
Great. Any questions for Councillor Butler? Seeing none, and Councillor Doby, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Payson, as well as Councillor Jones and Councillor Gattafoni Robinson. I also attended the Roslyn Follies, and the title it was, as Councillor Gattafoni Robinson mentioned, is What's in a Name. But I'd just like to add to that, because the book and the lyrics to this whole evening was written by a local, Marnie Jacobson. And so I just want to say kudos to her. She did a very good job. And as usual, they added a lot of fun into their presentation. So thank you to that. I also would like to report that there was over 1,700 people attended the market on last Saturday. And last Wednesday, I attended the online presentation by the government of the BC on climate change. And I've got the follow-up on it. And rather than going into a lot of detail, I will forward it all to council and to Mr. McClure. The one thing that I wanted to mention, and I'm not sure if that's in the presentation when they were doing their speaking, they've committed $390 million to climate change from 2021 through to 2025. But of course, that may change if we get a change in government. So that concludes my report, Mayor Payson. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Doby? Seeing none, go on to my report. So first I'll take Councillor Santori's role of indicating the GOC summary. So we had two very important presentations tonight. The first one was for Mr. Brian Maloney, who completed a Capilano University Local Government Administrative Certificate program, and Mr. David Moorhead, who completed the BC Board of Examiners Local Government Service Delivery Certificate. And it was nice that council had the opportunity to acknowledge and show appreciation for their great work with the city and also their commitment to furthering their education. The council then discussed the Trail Smoke Eaters Hockey Club request to extend usage of ice until April. And council did agree to extend ice usage until April 30th for the 2022-2023 season, but directed staff to take a look at the increases to the operating budgets in 23 to decide how we would move forward with that, and also realizing that it may, depending on how Silver City Days falls, impact provision of Silver City Days. The Sunningdale wide pedestrian safety improvement was approved, and this was $26,966.24 plus applicable taxes, fees, and charges to Rock Form Solutions Limited. And so hopefully that project will start in August, not April. And then there was one grant advanced, and we deferred that for further information from staff, and that was for the Trail Tadnak Team Tennis Society application to repair the courts up in Tadnak. So that is the GOC. With respect to my reports, I just had one. Like everyone, we just met not too long ago. It's just been a couple weeks ago. So I went on a tech tour with CAO McClure. It was a great opportunity for CAO McClure to be introduced to our largest employer in our region, not only our city, and gain a greater knowledge of the of tech and its footprint in town and what they do. And also for me as the Trail Health and Environment Committee lead to have another tour of the site to just refresh what's happening at the site. So CAO McClure, I'm going to pass that over to you, and you can just provide your perspective on it.
Sorry, some technical difficulties there. User technical. Yes, thank you, Mayor Payson, and thank you for getting the opportunity to go up to tech. I was thoroughly impressed. I think that a lot of times when you think about tech Kimiko and how long it has been there, or maybe a thought that it's an old technology or an old sort of process, and maybe the process is older, but how advanced, how technologically advanced the scientists, the staff that are there, the things that they work on, their commitment to ESG and the environment, I was thoroughly impressed. Absolutely amazing going through the zinc plant, had no idea how it was made, how they mix it, the product, how it's shipped. Again, in talking with staff who obviously not only are professional and so knowledgeable and experienced in this, and how they're proud of the fact that they use 99.5% of the raw materials that come into that location. Very, very, very little waste. Again, was uneducated in the understanding of the use of the kind of what would be in the past would have been a waste product of the sulfuric acid, and how that is now used, put into soil, and then need to use fertilizer, which then is sold around the world and goes back into our land as a product that helps flowers grow. And so anyway, as the Mr. Hickey, the general manager, spoke to, he says it's like one big chemistry set up there. Well, I didn't pay that much attention in high school chemistry, but I can tell you it was a sight to behold. Just again, fabulous, and their commitment to the community as well. Again, just thoroughly impressed, and hope to get another tour at some point in time, because it was so large. I only got to see parts of it, and I want to see more. This way that I am, but again, I think that Trail should be grateful, and the area should be grateful for an employer like that cares not only about the community, but also is doing the best in creating these products, which we use every single day, whether they're in our cell phones and in our cars. And some people might think, well, we don't want that sort of thing around here. And it's like, well, I don't know where else one would expect to have it done. And we all use these products. So I think that we should just, again, if everyone had the opportunity to find out how hard they are working to do it as most environmentally proper as they can. And again, the recycling and the fact that they would be at that high a percentage of use of products with little waste. Again, just thoroughly impressed with the operations. And again, look forward to working and seeing with them and over the future, and getting to know slightly with the general manager, and look forward to meeting with him on a regular basis to see what's happening with tech. And because I can certainly believe and sense that what's happening at tech affects what's happening in Trail.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting to hear your perspective, and thanks for sharing that with us. Does anyone have any questions on my reports? Seeing none, okay, we're going to move on then. Consent agenda. So we have 2 items on the consent agenda, and the recommendation is that the 2 items on the consent agenda be received for information. We have the report on invoices paid for municipal services from June 1st to 30th, 2022, and the Lower Columbia Initiatives Corporation 2022 second quarter report. Does anyone have any, is the motion, can someone please pass a motion to receive the items on the consent agenda, and then we can pull out anything that needs to be pulled out afterwards.
So moved.
Councillor Butler, thank you. And do I have someone to second that motion? Councillor Gattafoni Robinson, thank you very much. All in favor? Carried unanimously, thank you. Now, does anything need to be pulled out of the consent agenda? Seeing nothing, okay, we'll move on then. Any new business? Councillor Doby?
Thank you, Mayor Payson. I've had this situation brought to my attention a couple of weeks ago, and I've tried to find more information on it. But if at any time, Ms. McIsaac, you feel that this should be moved and closed, I expect that you'll let me know. Thank you. What's been happening for a number of years within the city of Trail is anybody that's getting the 2 grants on their taxation and are 65 or older, if they're under the poverty level, they're entitled to a poverty level grant as well. And as far as I know, that has not been advertised. When people get their assessments from the provincial government, there's nothing on there telling them that they have that opportunity to apply for that 3rd grant. And when our tax notice goes out from the city of Trail, again, there's nothing on there that tells them they can apply for that third level of grant. So I can't imagine, this has been available for a number of years, how many taxpayers, especially seniors that are under the poverty level, have been missing the opportunity of this grant and being able to save on the amount of payment of their taxes. So I would like to put a motion on the floor that this be investigated further and to see how we need to get this kind of information out to the seniors or other people that are under the poverty level.
Before we go to motion, does staff have any comment on that?
Your worship, that's the first that I have heard of it. Never experienced, never had it raised at any level of education. Doesn't mean that again, I could be unaware of it. So I know that there is the regular homeowner grant for $770, and then if you're a senior, you get a homeowner grant that is $1,045.
Right.
But other than that, I know that you can defer your taxes, whether you're senior and you've got equity in your home. You can also do it if you're a family and you have equity in your home. But I'm afraid this is the first that I have heard of such a below the poverty grant that would go towards property taxes. Now, whether or not someone could use that for property taxes or if there's a poverty grant, I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm unaware and happy to do some investigation to follow up on that.
Go ahead, Councillor Dobie.
So I think the original information, people were under the impression that in order to apply for that grant, you had to be disabled in some way, but that is apparently not true. And I believe that one senior has now applied for it and is in the process, I believe, of getting it. I think this has been a very, very well kept secret by the provincial government, but I'm not absolutely positive to that. But the information that has been brought to my attention seems to be pretty valid. So I thought it was best to bring this to council to see if we can do further investigation on this.
Yes, I'm aware of the disability, and again, but I didn't know of that being applicable there. And again, I endeavor to go and find out about that, and I can report back to council. And again, if it's something I agree, if there's something there that can assist seniors or others that are in that situation, by all means, we should be able to communicate that and be able to educate the public as well.
Okay. I also believe that if this is true, that all seniors that could have utilized this grant can go back exactly 1 year and get a refund on that. But again, I'm not sure. This is just all information that apparently has been well looked into and has been brought to my attention.
Yes, and if you have anything, Councillor Dobie, to forward me, I would be grateful to receive that information as well.
I will. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. McIsaac, do we need that in a motion? Do you have?
Oh, sorry, there's a bit of an echo there. Mr.
It's funny
McClure,
that it's just,
second.
it's funny that the echo is just starting now.
Let's try that.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay.
Thank you.
I heard Mr. McClure commit to doing some investigation, so I think it would be up to council as to whether or not you wish to frame that as a motion. It does seem that he's taking it under advisement and will get information back to you.
Councillor Dobie, how do you wish to proceed because you advanced this item of new business?
Okay, if Ms. McIsaac and Mr. McClure are happy without a motion to proceed as been discussed, I'm fine with that.
Okay, any other questions on this matter or comments? Councillor Butler, go ahead.
Councillor Dobie, I'm just wondering, are individuals talking about deferring their property taxes? Because
No.
Okay.
Okay, we'll leave it with CAO McClure. So Counselor Dobie, just to clarify, you don't require this as a formal motion. You're okay with our CAO taking it away and coming back with
That's fine.
something?
And I would just expect that this will be on the agenda for our next meeting or the one following that.
Well, I would imagine he would get it to you as soon as he possibly can, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And this isn't really new business, but I'm just kind of mixed up here. Can somebody confirm exactly when our next council meeting is?
It's Monday, August the 15th.
That's what I thought. Thank you.
Okay. Next item is department reports. 8.1 by Law Enforcement Department report of June 2022. The recommendation is that this report be received for information. Do I have someone to make that motion? Counselor Dobie, do I have someone to second that? Counselor Gattafoni Robinson, thank you very much. And does anyone have any questions or comments on this report? Seeing none, all in favor? Against, if any? Carried. Thank you. And 6:57, we will move for adjournment. Thanks, everyone. Have a nice evening.